The Jeffrey Epstein files have become a defining issue for Trump in his first year back at the White House, stoking allegations that his administration is covering up for the most notorious sexual predator in recent American history and his accomplices. But something that's flown under the radar is the story of how this man and his brother, two of them there, both facing charges of rape and human trafficking in Romania, were suddenly allowed to return to the United States, and how the Trump administration might have been involved in that. One of those men, Andrew Tate, is one of the most proudly, violently misogynistic influencers in the world, with an enormous following online, particularly among young men and even teenage boys. And in his online content, he and his brother have bragged about their recruitment and exploitation of women to make pornography. Both brothers have repeatedly denied criminal wrongdoing. Well, now the New York Times, in a remarkable investigative report, finds that they were released from Romanian custody only after Trump administration officials intervened. An official in the White House told the Times that it was not involved in Tate's legal matters. But the Times reports that 6 days before Trump's inauguration, Andrew Tate wrote in a text, quote, "I had word from the Trump administration that they're on top of things. I've been told I'll be free soon." And here is how the Tate brothers reacted when, in fact, they were freed. And they boarded their flights back to the States the very next month.
You know you are, Andrew. You know what we are? We are back. We are so back. No one has ever been more back than we just got.
It's true. And we never really left. So now we're back. Never left, but we're massively back.
Megyn, too, is a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter for the New York Times, one of the reporters who broke that story, and she joins me now. It's great to have you here. This is phenomenal work.
Thanks for having me.
I say that to you a lot because it's always true. So first, I guess, just for folks that don't know who Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan are, like, can you just give us a sense of who they are and what kind of content they made and what their message is?
Sure. So they are huge stars in the so-called manosphere. Andrew Tate, in particular, has built a massive audience of mostly young men by preaching brazen masculinity and chauvinism. And they have also taught courses on how to date women and exploit women and make money, and have also, very notably, run a porn business for about a decade, in which they kind of bragged about basically dating women and then steering those girlfriends into making content, online sexual content, in which they take most of the profits.
If I'm not mistaken, I think one of the courses they offered was like a pimping course, right? It had the acronym PIMP,
yeah,
right?
it was a PhD, short for Pimping Hoes degree.
Yes, and the whole idea was, and again, they would say this, is we will teach you how to find women, create some sort of what appears to be romantic connection with them, and then use that to manipulate them into them making sexual content that you profit off of. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they were born in the United States, but grew up, spent much of their life growing up in Britain. And so they launched this porn business, if you will, around the mid-2010s when they were based in Britain. And then in 2015, they moved to Romania. We found out Andrew was actually under criminal investigation then for alleged assaults of multiple women. As he tells it, thought that Romania, was a place where you could get away with a lot of stuff that you couldn't get away with in the West.
I think he even said that,
He even
right?
said that, yes.
Yeah, get away with.
Yeah, exactly. And so they they basically relocate to Romania. And so they're running this business out of both like Britain and Romania. They're growing it into a variety of platforms with a variety of women. And so they're doing all these things simultaneously. They're doing the porn business. Then they're teaching the online courses in which they're basically saying, we'll teach you the lessons we've learned from this porn
And there's
business.
some of the MMA stuff, fighting
Right.
and working out, and they're like, he's super ripped and all that, like all of that stuff adjacent to the sort of exploitation.
Yeah, exactly, like super fitness.
Yeah.
I mean, Andrew got his start as a professional kickboxer,
Right.
so it's really maximized that image.
So they have this huge following. Now, so that's sort of uncontested, right? That part of it, like that this is what they're about. And they've said it, and they've talked about needing to treat women like slaves, and you need to dominate them, and you need to treat them like a dog, that you say to them, you give them orders, right? And that you have to condition them the way you condition a dog. That's all stuff they've said. there are a variety of criminal allegations against them. Let's start with the Romania case. That was the reason they couldn't leave the country, because they were under indictment.
That's right. Well, actually, the reality is that they're actually under criminal investigation.
Sorry, criminal investigation. It's a different process.
It's a different process. So they have been, since late 2022, they have been under criminal investigation in Romania. And the allegations are there that they have coerced dozens of women into their porn business, into what amounts to trafficking. And that Andrew has raped one of those women. And there's accusations that he had sex with and beat a 15-year-old. And so those...
I want to just say that again. There's an accusation that he had sex with and beat a 15-year-old.
Correct. And so this case, as the prosecutors have been building this case, they have repeatedly sought to keep these guys confined. And so they had been prohibited from leaving the country as the prosecutors are building this case, with the prosecutors saying that they posed a public danger and a flight risk.
I want to read some of these texts that you have gotten in the article. This is a woman who says, "Do you want me to be your slave or your wife?" This is a woman who, again, he's sort of, it seems to be, recruiting kind of quasi-romantically and then maybe trying to move him to something else. "You'll do whatever I tell you," which is the same thing. "I'll choose a woman to be my wife. She'll love me enough to let me tell her what I feel like. I will decide if she's a slave." And then this is a text exchange in a text chat titled Pimps. This is two associates, along with Tristan, the brother, discussed how to punish a woman who said she would no longer work for them. Tristan Tate: "The move now is as follows. Okay. Both of you go. Get her out of the house. Okay. Hit her if you have to. I don't care. Don't let her take her things. Thanks. Okay."
You're right. Those are among the text messages that the prosecutors have gathered. I mean, we've been pouring through hundreds of pages of court records from Romania in which they've gathered together and spelled out what they say is a long pattern of this behavior with a variety of women.
There are other criminal charges in England, am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Britain, prosecutors have authorized charges. They're not just under investigation. They've authorized charges of trafficking and rape against both brothers there. And those are charges that they'll have to face when the Romania case is complete. They'll have to go to Britain and face those there. And we also realized, one of the things we discovered in the course of our reporting, I worked on this with my colleague, Isabella Quay, and what we found was that here in the United States since 2022, anti-trafficking agents at the Department of Homeland Security, as well as federal prosecutors here in New York, the ones who eventually won a conviction of Sean Combs, have been investigating the Tate brothers.
We should also note that almost immediately upon return, a girlfriend of Andrew Tate's accused him of assault and rape. He denies those charges. She has now sued him. He has countersued her for defamation.
Right.
So that happened immediately after he came back. Now, everyone, I think, has a picture of these individuals at this point. They were in Romania. It's very clear from your reporting, even though the Trump administration has tried very hard to run away from it and deny it, and Romanian officials have tried to deny it, that there was some pressure put by the Trump administration to get these guys back to the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, what we found was that their release from Romania was really the culmination of years-long efforts by Andrew Tate in particular to forge very strategic alliances with prominent figures on the American right, media figures like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, people in the Trump family, first Don Jr. and then Barron, and then eventually some of his supporters who were very public with their support and defense of him and their criticism of the Romanian criminal case ascended into the Trump administration.
Alina Habba has talked about him. Richard Grenell, who has a kind of freelance portfolio and in fact admits that he discussed the case with a Romanian official.
Right. Exactly. Paul Ingrassia, who actually served on the Trump's legal team, he ascends into the administration as well. And so after this new administration comes in, Richard Grenell, in particular, we found, had discussions with at least two Romanian officials about the Tate's case. One at Mar-a-Lago in December of 2024, the second in February at an international conference in Munich. And what we also found was that within days of that second conversation, An order from the highest levels of the Romanian government came down to the prosecutors in the criminal case, saying you got to strike a compromise with the Tate brothers, and they did
and
not.
They were unhappy.
They were outraged, but they did follow through with ultimately lifting their travel bans, which the Romanian prime minister believed was going to appease the Trump administration.
It's really a shocking set of events and incredibly scrupulous reporting about all this. And people should check it out at the New York Times, where you can read some of these texts and you can read more about some of the allegations against Andrew Tate and his brother, which the men deny. You should definitely check it out. Megan Twohey.
Earlier today, the lies that have largely propped up Donald Trump's rather brutal mass deportation campaign were revealed. They were laid bare in public. As his DHS secretary, Kristi Noem, was confronted with the impact of mass deportation, not on the worst of the worst that they claim they are targeting, but on the people, the best of the best, the people we are, by and large, as Americans, proud to call our fellow Americans. In a congressional hearing today, Kristi Noem was asked about DHS under her watch deporting the very people who have given the most to our country's veterans. Watch this.
How many United States military veterans have you deported?
Sir, we have not deported U.S. citizens or military veterans.
I don't believe you served in the military. I haven't either, but I think you and I can agree that as Americans, we owe everything to those who have served our country in uniform, particularly those who have served in combat. Do you agree with that?
Sir, I believe that people that are in this United States that are citizens have legal status here.
Madam Secretary, we are joined on Zoom by a gentleman named Se-Jun Park. He is a United States Army combat veteran who was shot twice while serving our country in Panama. He is a combat veteran, a Purple Heart recipient. He has sacrificed more for this country than most people ever have. Earlier this year, you deported him to Korea, a country he hasn't lived in since he was 7 years old. Will you join me in thanking Mr. Park for his service to our country?
Sir, I'm grateful for every single person that has served our country and follows our laws.
Can you please tell Mr. Park why you deported him?
Every one of them needs to be enforced.
So she's actually articulating a fascinating and wildly unpopular policy there. Kristi Noem, they're saying on camera in front of Congress that she does intend to deport veterans if at any point they came to this country illegally. She does eventually break down and agree to look at the case. And then she ducked out of the hearing early. We're back with Alex and John. Alex, I think we're all of like mind about the heinous nature of how they're going about mass deportation of human beings, the terror that they're intentionally creating in communities all over our country. And what she made clear today is the intentional deportation of veterans of the United States military.
Yeah, because that veteran happened to be brown, and the target list is people who are people of color. I mean, I think I read into it two things, Nicole. One is Trump says this is about taking out the garbage, getting the worst of the worst out of the country. That it doesn't matter if you're a Purple Heart recipient. If you happen to be brown and you happen to have at one point not legal status, you're gone. Doesn't matter if you have fought for this country and sacrificed for this country and have a Purple Heart, you're gone. There are no exceptions. The second piece of it is, I actually don't think they have no hands on this. They have no eyes on the scope of these deportations. They know they're happening. There's hundreds of thousands of people who've been taken out of this country, but I think it's incredibly chaotic by design. I mean, for my podcast, I talked to an immigration judge who'd just been fired, because part of the agenda here is to diminish the resources that have been allocated in years prior to make sure the system of deportation or granting asylum is orderly and lawful. There is no due process. People don't know what they're doing. They're firing immigration judges who, by the way, have caseloads numbering into the tens of thousands. The Trump administration is actively firing them, so there are fewer resources for the legal process. They're bringing in some cases, military lawyers to expedite the process. But ultimately, the chaos is the point. Sweeping people up, asking for forgiveness and not permission, figuring out the law later, figuring out whether you've deported a Purple Heart recipient. These are the details. The point is to inflict terror and to get as many brown and black people out of the country as possible, while simultaneously letting in a handful of white Afrikaners and saying publicly, as President Trump did in Pennsylvania on Tuesday, he'd rather have people from white Western countries like Norway and Scandinavia, better places, not the garbage people who fight and sacrifice for this country and win Purple Hearts in the process.
Let me show you some more of what the people who have fought and sacrificed for this country are enduring under Donald Trump. This is Alejandro Barranco.
You've already heard the story of Lance Corporal Alejandro Barranco, the United States Marine veteran who is behind you, who also has two brothers who are United States Marines. Will you thank Lance Corporal Barranco for his service?
Thank you for your service.
His father, Narcisco Barranco, is a landscaper in California who has lived peacefully in our country for 30 years and has no criminal record. Will you consider Lance Corporal Barranco's father for parole in place to stay in our country, owing to the fact that he has contributed to our country by raising 3 United States Marines?
This is an opportunity to remind everybody that every person that's in this country illegally has an opportunity to voluntarily go home and come back the right way.
Again, another, FU and the 3 Marines he rode in on. Unbelievable. First of all, unbelievable that she was confronted with the monstrosity of what they're doing, but that she would not say that someone whose 3 sons have given their life in service of the United States of America it's the person who, when you think who would shoot a puppy, I mean, Kristi Noem wrote in her own book that she shot her puppy. Yeah. That's who she is.
I think that, first of all, congratulations to Congressman Magazzino there. Who,
it's awesome, yeah.
As a piece of, we often talk about how Democrats don't know how to, do the theater of this. And I say theater not to demean it, but to praise it. I mean, that's a totally legit function. And they went out and found some people that really made Kristi Noem squirm there. But her performance is so bad that it does call into question, or not call into question, it suggests the following thing, which is that, this isn't one of these obvious places where the constituency of one, the Donald Trump of it all, has taken people, whatever you think of Kristi Noem as a human being or as a sentient being on planet Earth, she has some political skills that she had exhibited in the past. She'd won some offices, statewide offices. Any sane politician in that moment would do the calculation in their head. At the worst case,
Donald Trump wouldn't have answered the question the way she did.
Right, Donald Trump. I mean, exactly right. You would think to yourself, even if you were a complete thug, you would think, how many veterans have we actually swept up? It's probably not that many, right? What would it cost me in this moment to say, our veterans are the greatest heroes we have in America. We owe a huge debt to them. If someone has been mistakenly swept up, if someone has been swept up in these raids, I obviously we owe a lot to them, and we should look into this. And if she had said that from the very beginning, just graciously expressed her gratitude for their service and said she was willing to look into any case like this to see if something had gone wrong and they had done something that could be remedied, all of the energy of that piece of theatrics that the congressman did so successfully there, all of it would have gone away. But she's lost her political compass because she's thinking, what will Donald Trump say if I give an inch? What will Donald Trump say if I admit that we might have made a small mistake? Which was obviously the right thing to do, just in terms of the politics here, would have been to just cut that thing off quickly and say, we'll look into any of these cases involving veterans. Thank you. Let's move on.
Right. Or you know what? I'll call the president, And
exactly. With Trump in his non-diminished state, Trump would have done that in a heartbeat.
Correct.
Would have been like, he would have gone over to give the guy a hug and said, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. Yeah, if we screwed this up, it's on me.
Let's fix it. To the White House. Yeah.
Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee.
Congressman, it is good to see you. Has the Armed Services Committee received a classified briefing, or have you been told to expect one about the seizure?
We expect one next week, but that is not good enough. Pete Hegseth needs to come before my committee in front of the American people, not behind closed doors. He needs to answer why he struck a boat on a second time when they were unarmed men ready to surrender. And more urgently, he and the president need to answer why they're trying to have a regime change war in Venezuela. The American people don't want trillions of dollars going on these overseas wars. They want us focused here at home. And Trump is betraying his own base. And that's why you have Republicans who are now calling him into question, just like they did with the Epstein files.
Congressman, this is not the first time the U.S. government has seized vessels. I mean, this has happened before. But what is it about this effort by the administration, the nature of it, and certainly including the lack of information coming to the Congress or even getting to the table with you guys beforehand to say, hey, this is what we're looking to do. Talk about a little, give folks a sense of how it used to be and how it is now. Because, again, this type of action is not an unprecedented action by the administration, but it's just the way they're doing it that's different.
Well, certainly they haven't given any advance heads up to the Gang of Eight, the intelligence leaders, the leadership of the House, the Armed Services Committee about their strategy and the plan. But more than that, they're increasing our troop presence, our Navy, our inside intelligence officers in Venezuela. And there are people who want to make this pressure Maduro to give up power. It's a regime change effort, and they're not hiding that. And the American people voted for Trump, saying he wasn't going to take us in more of these wars. Look, they're giving our chips to China. They just allowed NVIDIA to sell more compute power to China, while China is building its industrial base, and they're getting us into more wars.
Well, we get 25%. So this is we get a deal, Simone.
But the question I continue to have is where is that money going? That the U.S. government is getting pieces of the profits of these companies, yet is it going into a fund somewhere that has Donald Trump's name on it? I still don't understand. It's not clear. On these, I think you've hit something on the dovetailing with the boat strikes and then the U.S. tankers, because Michael is right. Like, the White House is using a sliver of historical fact. Yes, the U.S. has seized oil tankers before. They have seized vessels, but when they've done so legally. They've done so with a warrant of which they could produce evidence for. It has not been done in secret. So they're using what is, again, a sliver of historical fact to execute yet another legally dubious operation in the name of what? I am concerned that yet again, America, I'm concerned that the president could be potentially committing our U.S. service members, the men and women, our sons and daughters who put their lives on the line every day to serve this country, to a war in Venezuela, to a combat in Venezuela, because we are not at war, but for what? This is not just an international story. This is a story about, again, the overreach of this White House, the whole government being turned into just executing on the petty grievances of one man. He has always had Venezuela in his crosshairs. To be clear, Maduro's no, sparkling flower. Like he stole an election the last time there was one. Like no one's trying to defend Maduro. Okay. I am, though, concerned about what the administration is, why they are doing what they're doing in secret, not providing us any real explanation. And then for what? What is this all for at the end of the day? Is it really about the oil?
Well, they're doing it in secret because they know it's unpopular. Of course, Maduro is horrible, and he had an illegitimate election. Saddam Hussein was horrible. Does that mean we should have gone in and had a regime change war in Iraq? Libya was horrible, but most people don't think we should have had a regime change there. Most people don't think we should have stayed in Afghanistan for 20 years trying to build a democracy. Americans died, and our tax money went to waste. People want us focused on health care. Their health care costs are too high. Their child care costs are too high. Their housing costs are too high. What happened to America first? All I see is this president hanging out with the tech billionaires in my district, tech billionaires first, and striking other countries. It's exactly the opposite of what he promised the American people. And that's why he's hiding, because he knows that this is not what his base wants. And that's why you're seeing Republicans like Michael Turner, like Don Bacon, starting to question him and saying, this is not legal and this is not what we voted for.
Speaking of Don Bacon, this is what he had to say about the possibility of a war powers vote. Quote, they need to come to Congress and say what they're doing. We don't know what's going on. Nobody knows what the mission is in Venezuela. The president made zero case and his team for what they're doing in Venezuela. There's clearly appetite among some of your Republican colleagues for a war powers vote. Is there enough to get it on the floor and get it through the House?
I believe that it's growing. I mean, and to Moan's point also about the oil, look, there is a refinery that has financial interests off the Gulf of Mexico that only refines Venezuelan oil. And so there are a lot of financial interests here that want Maduro out. And that's fine if it was a democratic process. But do you really want American lives at stake in a regime change war? And the billions that it is costing us, these strikes and the increase of our Navy there. So my view is that there's growing concern, and I do believe that the votes are going to be there for a war powers resolution.
So let's shift gears, but then again, not so much. It was very interesting to hear the House Armed Services Chairman, Mike Rogers, saying that, you know what? We've done enough on these boat strikes. We've seen it all. Noting, quote, I was very vigorous. I personally got involved. I talked with the chairman of Joint Chiefs first. I talked with the SecDef second. Then we had the Admiral Bradley come in. He gave us a full readout on what happened. We saw the video, got all our questions answered, talked yesterday at length with Admiral Halsey. I know everything that happened, and I'm completely comfortable. We got all the facts. We don't have to do anything else. We're done. But here's the deal. Republicans only have a 3-seat majority on this committee. Are there Republicans who heard that, knowing everything else that they know, that can possibly be pulled into a situation where they can stand with Democrats and say, no, we're not done? There is more work to do here. There are more questions. This administration still has not accounted for the over 80 people whom they've killed in the name of this country, the American people. So, yeah, we have more questions.
There are, Michael, and Don Bacon being one of them, Michael Turner being one of them. These are not doves. Michael Turner is a hawk. Don Bacon served this country for 30 years in the Air Force. He's a general. And they're saying this is not the way America does business. This may be how Putin does business. Just go strike boats and answer questions later. And by the way, we have a democracy. Look, I have a good relationship with Chairman Rogers. But in a democracy, you don't get one person behind the scenes having behind-the-scenes conversations and then come out and say everything is fine. Have transparency. If the strikes aren't a problem, why don't you put out the video?
Put the video out, right?
Put out the video. I mean, give me a break. There's no intelligence that's going to be compromised. The only intelligence that's going to be compromised is the honor of Pete Hegseth. He doesn't want to be embarrassed. Let's speak plainly.
Yeah.
And so first he's like, I want the video out. I don't want the video out. Put out the video. Have him testify. Have him take questions from the Armed Services Committee in a live hearing. Why won't they do that? Look, the Republicans are finally standing up to Donald Trump. There's something that has shifted over the last 4 weeks. They stood up to him and defied him on Epstein. It was an overwhelming vote. They are now standing up to him on Venezuela. You have people standing up to him on these tariffs. The dam is breaking. And I'm increasingly confident that people are seeing the lawlessness that he has unleashed on the country.
This is a very optimistic outlook. I'm going to reserve my optimism, Congressman.
Because she's concerned.
Because I'm very concerned. But on the Epstein files, then, there are, and this is from there's a letter from the Judiciary Committee. Senators are calling on the Department of Justice Inspector General to ensure the Epstein files have not been tampered with by taking a look at the chain of custody forms, matching those up. Much like the boat strikes, it seems like the cover-up with the Epstein files situation, the administration is going through great lengths not to show us what is in these documents. Do you share the same concerns as the Senate Judiciary Committee?
I do, and I also appreciate the survivors having their lawsuit to ensure that there's full transparency. But let me say three things that have happened positively. You've had 3 judges in Florida and 2 in New York who have ordered, based on the Epstein Transparency Act, documents to come out in the grand jury of both Epstein and Maxwell and some of the discovery documents. And the Justice Department actually supported that. So we're going to find out on December 19th what comes out. But we will be fighting until there's full transparency and everything comes out.
The Epstein scandal, the backlash over ICE, it's coming to a head. Protests today at the House hearing for Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem. One protester dressed as a cardinal holding up a sign saying, "Stop ICE raids."
With me, I'd like to introduce them to you.
End deportations. Disruptions of congressional business is a... Get ICE off our streets. Stop terrorizing our community. No, get ICE off our streets. Stop terrorizing our community.
Today, the AP reporting on polls showing Trump's longtime issues, things that whether you agree with him or not, there were periods where we can accurately report that independents, moderates, even some conservative Democrats thought that he was strong on, say, the immigration agenda or the economy when people were angry at the then incumbent Biden-Harris administration. So think about those 2 issues. They have become weaknesses for Trump. The 2 signature issues that, as one outlet put it, got him, quote, elected a year ago, that's what the AP says, could be turning into liabilities as his party is gearing up for these midterms. Since taking office, we'll just show you the facts. Do with them what you will. Trump down 11 points on immigration. Remember, his so-called get tough on immigration plans were something that he said helped him last year and that people wanted. Well, they don't like it now when it's actually happening, at least the way they're doing it. And the economy, again, where he did run effectively on inflation concerns, well, now he owns them. And he's down 9 points to a sad 31%. If you're thinking that sounds low, it is. It's a low for this term. Politico says Trump allies now worry he is basically a, quote, imperfect messenger on this economic issue because he won't admit temperamentally that Americans face high prices. You might call this a kind of Freudian problem for Trump, that his ego is getting in the way of his actual goals, which would be, and it's not that hard to do, the goal would be to tell people, I get it, you want prices lower, I'm not perfect, I'll work on it, but that's not what the White House is saying. Politico reports, quote, unfortunately, I just don't think Trump is temperamentally capable of reversing himself and saying, yes, affordability is a concern. He's stubborn, they quote this ally as saying. The problem is the overall cost of living has continued to climb under Trump. Grocery costs up about 3 points. The lights are up 5%, and most people don't want to ration their electricity. So people are upset. Trump promised to address this problem. He is not doing that. And then there's health care, which for so many Americans is not only a constant concern, whether you're getting the right health care and enough, whether your kids will be okay, but also if you had a health care emergency, what would you do? That's something in the back of the mind for people because we don't have a system right now that looks out for everybody and makes it affordable. Now, it's complicated. I probably told you that before, and if you're watching the news, you probably know that. But if you talk about the government, which has been under Trump cutting taxes for the super rich and cutting crypto deals for their buddies, does the government under Trump want to help allay any health care costs? The news today is no. Trump's party controls the Senate. They could not extend even the prior agreed upon money, the subsidies for people under current federal health care programs, under what you might have heard of as Obamacare. And that will cause, according to these estimates, premiums to double for over 20 million people. Guess what? Higher health care costs? That's not a partisan thing. It's generally unpopular. Then there's the Epstein Files deadline. That's December 19th in 8 days. And some prominent voices on the right are warning this has become a bigger problem. It's not just Epstein or just immigration, as I mentioned, or even just the debates over whether America's committing war crimes and a foreign entanglement. It is snowballing together for Republicans.
Hard stops in American politics typically create massive political blowback, and 2026 looks like it's going to be pretty ugly for Republicans anyways. The political blowback is going to lead to Democrats in power in 2028.
You can't gaslight people and tell them that their bills are affordable, and you can't tell them that the economy is an A+++. You just can't do that. And I think it's insulting to people's intelligence.
Now, will it be enough to save the Republicans in the midterms? Probably not, but that's okay. This is a long-term deal. You're going to lose the House. You may keep the Senate. I'll take that.
The voices you're hearing are people who are actively, publicly aligned with Trump and the Republican Party. They would like things to be going better. They would like Trump to be ahead. They would like Republicans to be on track, in their view, and nobody knows for sure, to win the midterms or hold on to some seats. And if it were really close in politics, those are the type of people we know from history who don't usually jump to the worst conclusion for their side. Things have to get this bad, not day one of the Epstein vote or day one of the Venezuela clash or even day 10 of the bad polling. No, this has been building, and things get this bad that they're saying something out loud in public that we know Trump and the White House won't like, but they think they got to help these guys and deal with the quote I read you from Politico, the warnings from people around Trump that he will not right the ship if he is not emotionally there. And then you have, of course, the evidence. It's not a hypothetical. Dems swept all the races where people did vote last month. This week, they flipped a mayor's race in a city that hadn't gone Democratic in 28 years. Again, there are places where Democrats don't do well. I will always give you the facts. Make of it what you will. Miami is a place, diverse, interesting city, that had not chosen Democrats in a long time. Now they are. Whether that's because they're fed up with Republicans or they like Democrats, people can debate, but that's bad news if you're a Republican looking at the trends. And let me show you something that gets a little less attention as we take this in tonight. State-level elections. This is a new report that shows Democrats, when you look at the small races, and some of them don't make national news, have actually already flipped 25 Republican seats this year. I have Jen Psaki coming up. I'm going to ask her about this because you say, okay, well, what about the other side of it? Republicans have flipped none. Zero. At the local level where politics really happens, there has not been an instance yet this year where voters have said, hey, we want to go more red. Just hasn't happened. And that's where we start. A red alert that's gotten loud enough that even Republican allies, Fox News voices, people who want Trump to win are saying they got to address the problem now before it's too late for them. I want to bring in Jen Psaki, our leadoff guest, of course, host of the briefing on MS Now. She's also a White House veteran, having served in the Biden administration and the Obama White House. Welcome.
Great to see you, Ari. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you on. You know, your record is that top-level experience, which is cool. Most people don't get a White House job. But you've started, I know, and worked in local campaigns. And I wonder what you think those local numbers show, because whatever's going on out in the community, wherever people are getting their information, Democrats flipping all the local seats, plus the environment I just mentioned, seems to be a pretty big indicator.
No question about it. I mean, yes, there's 11 months or just under 11 months until the midterm elections, but you referenced a couple of the races this week. And if you look at those races, the Miami mayoral race, which, as you noted, there hasn't been a Democratic mayor elected there in 28 years. But what's also interesting when you dig into the numbers is that Vice President Harris won Miami by just 1 point a year ago. And this mayor won by 19 points. And a big part of that seems to be a flip in Latino voters. And that is a trend that we're seeing also across the country and other parts of the country as well. And that is a big voting bloc that has sort of moved away from Democrats in recent years to some degree. And the hope, I think, for a lot of Democrats is that they are moving back. This also, I would also note on the Georgia race, the state legislative race that was won the other night as well, that is a race that flipped by more than 10 points. And that is an indicator, too, that there's not just excitement out there. In local races, it's not necessarily, not typically, about topics we often talk about, like the Epstein files or even the potential war crimes in these strikes in the Caribbean. It's about issues impacting people, affordability, the cost of living, and whether the party in power is achieving that. So it's an indication that people are dissatisfied with that as well, which is a good lesson for Republicans to do more, and also a good message for Democrats moving forward.
Yeah, and the economy is the great reality test. You're alluding to that. You know, people can debate whether you can get really accurate information from Real Housewives, the Kardashians, or The Apprentice, right? That's up to the people. But there was an indication that some people had watched Trump's Apprentice long enough to think, well, look at him in the boardroom, and he'll be good on the economy. And I don't patronize to that. We talk a lot about culture and different ways to message on this program and elsewhere. So the idea, though, that he's good on the economy has been blown up this year, more so than in his first term, because COVID, while it hurt the economy, was a whole different issue, and we all know what happened. I want to mention that and get your response, because this is some of the questioning at the White House.
Yeah, I also think part of it...
Is it a good look for him to be telling parents, oh, you should only buy, $2 or $3 for your kids, when he's one of the wealthiest people in the country?
It was a year ago, as you know, and grocery prices have been up. So we've covered the economy, but there's mixed signals in terms of what that looks like. But
inflation is down from where it was.
You said he's working to find a solution. He wants to see a solution to lower healthcare costs.
He does.
But these subsidies are expiring at the end of the year. So what is the plan, and what is he going to do to put this in place in the next 2-3 weeks?
You'll hear more from the president and from the White House on that very soon.
Jen?
First of all, I almost cut off the White House reporters there, which is just, I was just going back to my old stomping grounds there. I think I think it wasn't even intentional. I think it's a clear indication, Ari. I mean, these are the issues which you see in these polls. I mean, 31% approval rating on the economy is an abysmally low number for any president. And in addition to the cultural side, which I think is definitely a truth here when it comes to Trump in terms of what people believed out there, it's much easier to run as the opposition, to run against what the sitting party that is in power is doing and say, I'm going to do it all better. It's much harder to govern and actually do the things you're promising to do. And the thing with Trump is that he's not a policy guy. He's not a guy who's interested in the details or somebody who really gets engaged to date in really legislating and policy making. And so the things that he said he was going to do, when he doesn't deliver on them, people are going to ask questions. The healthcare question, which came up, and I expect they're going to just get, the more Caroline Leavitt goes out there, the more they're going to get questions on this. The clear message from the public is affordability is the issue. Affordability is not just economic data. In fact, it shouldn't be thought of as economic data. The cost of health care is a huge affordability issue. And right now, Republicans, they don't have a clear plan. They don't have agreement on what the plan is. This would be a case where any normal president would engage and figure out what the plan is moving forward.